Hello, hello, welcome. Um, welcome to the Essex Allotment Live podcast. Now, this is a trial for something that we could possibly be doing late in the season. So, I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes simultaneously streaming live on Instagram and YouTube, talking about all things seeds and hopefully answering some of your questions. So, hello to anyone that's joining in. So, for those of you who don't know who I am, and that's pretty likely because I haven't been particularly active on social media over the last 18 months, my name's Alex. I am the founder of the Essex Allotment Farm, which for its most part is a 4 seasons market garden supplying chemical-free vegetables for a local veg box service and farmers markets. Now, there's little side elements to the business, social media being one of them, that we'll get into perhaps at a later date, or maybe if I get stuck on something to talk about later in this podcast. So, as I alluded to, we are going to be talking about seeds. Now, I am doing this live, so I will be responding to the various things going on Instagram and YouTube. I'll do my best to answer any questions as and when they pop up, and we'll take it from there. It's a bit of a pilot. It's the first dip, or I'm dipping my toe into something that could potentially be a new project later in the season. So anyway, as I alluded to, I'm Alex. I'm the owner and founder of the Essex Allotment Farm. So it's the time of year where we are thinking about or already started sowing our seeds. And like you, I'm itching to get going. And at this time of year, it's a bit of a battle of wills, and we are battling against holding back, holding back, holding back. And I've got a connection issue here. Sorry, I'm just going to have to edit that out. Like I said, it is a pilot, so we'll just see how we're going. But yes, so we're battling against our better conscience to stop ourselves sowing seeds too early. So I'm going to talk about that first. So in January, I try not to sow any seeds, but like everyone else, I get a little bit excited. And the general rule that I would put into sowing seeds in January is, unless you have grow lights or additional heat, sowing any seeds, which includes chilies and peppers, is a bad idea in January. And that is because even if you can give them heat, i.e., on a small scale, germinate them on a windowsill above the radiator or in your house somewhere, the light levels at this time of year are too low. So give me a shout out on either YouTube or Instagram and let me know if you've sown anything yet. And if you have you seen germination? And let me know what you've sown. But as I said, even in the farm, even in some of the consultancy projects that we do as part of the Essex Allotment Farm for cafes and restaurants, we haven't actually sown any seeds yet, unless we've got access to heat and light. So at one of our locations, which is the Tin Roof Cafe in Malden, we've got a greenhouse that's got additional heating and grow lights in it. So that's the only location out of our 3 or 4 locations that we're a part of that we've currently sowing seeds of any kind. And even still at this point, it's only chilies. Now we've got someone on Instagram asking, temperature for germination in January is still cold, believe is still too cold. Yeah, you're absolutely right, as I've just alluded to. Unless you've got additional heat, I personally wouldn't be sowing seeds at this time of year. But we're nearly in February, so I would be thinking about ordering, going and buying those seeds, looking at, if you haven't already done so, looking at some of the varieties of chilies that you'll be growing this season. I'm going to share with you a few. I'm going to read them, so just forgive me if I look down at the screen. A few of the things that I'll be sowing this season, and these are some of my favourite chili peppers to grow. So I'll take you through a few. I told you I'm going to struggle a little bit. I'm pretty new to all this. Um, I'm going to sow these, and I've been sowing these particular hot peppers or chilies for the last few years, and they're favourites of mine. So it's not my entire range, but these are some of the ones that I can't live without. So there's 3 pepper varieties here, and it's nothing too exciting. We've got a habanero, but I prefer the orange variety. They look a little bit different and a little bit better at either farmers markets, or they get a bit of a different color as opposed to green or red in veg boxes. We've got jalapenos, which are just a stonewall and an absolute favorite of mine, and they tend to be easier, or not easier to grow, but we've had good experiences with growing those in the past. And then another favorite of mine is lemon drop chilies. So they just give a bit of a zesty edge to your to a mild chili pepper. So there are 3 varieties that I've sow every single year. If you've got any varieties that you can't live without, again, drop them in the comments, and I will be able to have a look at them and see if it's something that we might be able to add to our roster throughout the year when it comes to that. Other sort of vegetables that you might think about growing or sowing in February, again, if you've got additional heat and perhaps some additional light, would be aubergines. They need a long extended growing season and a very warm summer if you're in the UK to have any sort of success with aubergines. Those are the kind of 2 factors that are really important for growing aubergines throughout the season. So yeah, I would be looking for mid-February to sow my aubergine plants. I've going for Long Purple and Moneymaker, again, are 2 absolute stonewalls when it comes to our rosters. And yeah, I think if you have got the heat and you have got that additional light, early to mid-February is a great time to sow them. But like I said, what goes along with aubergines is that you need a really long hot summer to really see the fruits of your labor. They're quite a difficult thing to grow here in the UK. Certainly, I'll be growing mine in polytunnels or in greenhouses again this season to really help extend that long hot summer. And when it comes to the end of February, our light levels in the UK now, I'm the south of the UK in Essex, they really start to increase towards the end of February, light levels. And you can start to think about sowing some of your early crops for the season. Germination and keeping them frost free, depending on where you are in the country, will be your biggest challenge if you're sowing things that early. But stuff like greens and lettuces and stuff like that, if you get the varieties right and the sowing times right, can be an exciting addition to your sowing towards the end of February. So that's sort of what I'll be sowing between now and perhaps when I do the next podcast. I've got someone say here on YouTube saying it's good to see that I'm back. That's very kind of you to say. We've got Muddy Boots Allotment on here saying, hi Alex, long time no see. Yes, I said alluded to at the beginning, it's been a while since I did anything on social media, so this is just a bit of a test. I've already stumbled a couple of times, but we'll see how we get on. Another person saying, I'm glad to see your videos of any of your growing projects. You've inspired me, especially in growing at scale, which is very nice for you to say. So let's flip back to that slightly, since people are asking the question. So the main part of my business is a small market garden, or small farm, large market garden. We grow on just over an acre, and it's for chemical-free vegetables for a veg box service and farmers markets. But then the side parts of the business that I've been sharing on YouTube a little bit, maybe a year ago, and certainly continuously on Instagram, is a consultancy sort of part of the business where we go in and design and manage small kitchen gardens for things like high-end cafes, restaurants, pubs, etc. One of the most exciting projects in the last 12 months has been the Tin Roof Cafe in Malden in Essex. And yeah, I hope to be able to share a little bit more of that story with you this season. So you never know. I might get a little bit better at consistency when it comes to videos and things like that. So again, still keep firing in your questions if you've got any across Instagram or YouTube. We're predominantly talking about seed sowing. I've gone through what I'm probably going to be sowing in the next 2 to 3 weeks, which was predominantly just um, aubergines, chilies, maybe some peppers, some lettuce varieties towards the end of February. But the main crux is, unless you've got heat and additional light, it's still probably a few weeks too early. I've got a question from Lee Ravenhill on Instagram. He says, previous you start Essex allotment, did you experience in growing stuff? No. So my story is I started with the council allotment probably 10 plus years ago, self-taught, then went on to do some online courses while I had a job, a full-time job doing something completely different. I then took the plunge about 4 years ago to rent and buy some land, small pieces of land in and around Essex, and take the plunge to start growing commercially, albeit on a small scale. So that's the answer to your question. Thanks for that question. Muddy Boots Allotment says, have you had any casualties with the bad weather over the last few months? So no, we haven't. Predominantly, most of our projects don't grow too much over winter. We effectively grow veg boxes for 30 weeks of the year, then we shut down a little bit. So at the moment, we're doing ground prep. We've got our overwintered stuff in. This year, we haven't bothered with broad beans over winter. We'll just catch up and sow those early spring. The only thing we've got in the ground really is some onions and garlic for the new season. Garlic seems to be hanging on in there. And again, I know you're sort of Midlands, the person that asked that question. I think we tend to have a bit of a microclimate here in Essex, and we haven't really even had any hard frost yet. It means still might come. We're just a little bit wet, but even still, by comparison, we haven't had a particularly cold winter so far. Okay, so a couple more questions. Allotment Plot 25 says, is there anything you're sowing that you've never grown before? There will be, not right now. So there's varieties of garlic that we're trying. We always have our standard varieties that we grow year in, year out, and then we'll add and try a couple of different ones throughout each season. If they're successful and we like them, then we'll add them to the main sort of amount of garlic. To give you some context, we'll be trying to grow somewhere upwards of 5,000, 6,000 garlic this year to service our veg boxes. Is there anything you're sowing that you've never grown? I've just read that twice. See, this is what I'm saying. I'm pretty new to this. I don't really know what I'm doing. So I've read a question out twice. What type of compost do you use for germination? Again, it all depends on the time of year. It depends on the what it is that you're actually sowing in that compost, how long that plant is going to be in that particular cell or pot. So if we sell in 104 cell seed trays, 104 cell seed trays. So they're tiny little cells within a seed tray, a bit like Charles Dowding does, or lots of the market gardeners do. If it's going to be in that type of thing and it's going to be in there for a few weeks while it germinates and grows into a small plant, and then we're going to pot it on, then we do use a specific seed compost. If we're just going to go from sowing it in a 104 cell tray to direct into the ground, then we'll just use a cheaper multi-purpose compost, because we're literally just getting it to germinate and then we're putting it straight in the ground, where we've already done the ground prep and added natural amendments to the ground. So that's the general rule, but as I said, it changes from depending on what we're sowing and the size of the seed trays and stuff like that. I've got a couple more questions coming through, which is I didn't exactly anticipate this is the direction that it would go into, but we'll go for it. Do you still use the regenerative agriculture techniques that you started with, e.g., broad forking? Absolutely, yeah. So the biggest tool that we use is a BCS walk behind tiller, which doesn't invert the soil. It actually sort of spins it that way, and we only use that tool when we're breaking new ground or making new beds. And then once that bed is in production, we use, no till, no dig methods within those beds, unless something goes drastically wrong and we have to rebuild the beds, which doesn't, it happens very rarely. So effectively, once that bed at the beginning of the season has been built, or we've broke that new ground, and we've shaped the beds to where we want them to be in the size and look like, we're only adding compost or manures or soil amendments to the top. We're using a broad fork to loosen the ground because we're super heavy clay here, and planting directly into that. So yeah, that's the answer to your question. I hope that helps. Someone here is asking, do you ever think in the future you'll have a plan to have a bigger shop in Chelmsford? I think we need to stand up for the rest of the land for the rest of the vegetable directly from allotments. There are some things in the pipeline around shops or tuck shops or places, pick up and drop off points for vegetables for later in the season, but it's not far enough along for me to be able to share that yet. But yes, watch this space, I guess, would be my thing. Right. I think I'm caught up with questions. So we're going to go back to sort of like the main topic, which was seeds. So I'm not brand loyal when it comes to seeds. I've got a few seed companies that we use, Moles, Lion Seeds. They're local to me in Essex. Obviously, for me, it's slightly different because I'm buying in a lot bigger, in a lot bulk. However, I have come from an allotment background as opposed to an agriculture background, so I'm still familiar with people like Premier Seeds, some the other companies, Mr. Fotheringills and things like that. So when it comes to choosing your seeds and where to get them from, I'm not particularly brand loyal. I do like Premier Seeds. They've got a good range of organic seed. Their range of non-organic seed is great as well. It's something I might touch on a little bit later, how I feel about organic seed versus non-organic seed. We grow free from chemicals and pesticides. We're not organic certified. We don't use any chemicals. So we tend to buy, or we try our utmost to get every single variety in organic seeds, and if we can't, we tend not to do that particular variety for that particular season until it becomes available again in organic. But for the majority of you, I'm not like precious about it being organic seed. I think if you're growing regeneratively using no-till principles, you're not using chemicals or pesticides, I think spending extra on organic seed is a bit of a nice to do and not a need to do. Obviously, it's different for myself because we make that promise to our customers. But for you guys, I think if you're doing all of that, you're best saving money on buying non-organic seeds, which is where I think Premier Seeds Direct come in, because I think their price point for the amount of seeds that you get is really, really, really good compared to over-the-counter, shop bought, all those branded ones that Mr. Fotheringills I keep picking on, but that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. I think they tend to be overpriced for the amount of seeds you get. DT Brown are quite good. Real Seeds, if you want something a bit quirky and a bit unique, I've used those guys before. So that's where I'd sort of go if I was going for my seeds. But like I said, I'm not brand loyal. I have to use certain brands if we want KLETs, for example, because some companies own the rights to KLET, so you can only get them from those particular companies. So yeah, that would be my go-to if I was still allotmenteering, or I wasn't fussed necessarily about specific organic seeds. I would go Premier Seed Direct would be my tip if you haven't come across those so far. Seed storage and sowing techniques, it's a bit hard to sort of describe in this kind of format. Um, Someone saying Lion Seeds is in Malden. Yes, I've got a relationship with Lion Seeds. I know very well, the wife of someone that is heavily involved with that company, and it's certainly someone that I've used before. Um, that's a great shout. So yeah, what was I going? Storage. We tend to sort of refresh our seeds every year. Again, it's a large part of the farm is around productivity, and because there's a costing to everything. We can't necessarily afford to have poor germination. And in the grand scheme of things, the cost of seeds is quite low. It's most of our, you know, costing is to do with labor as opposed to the actual seed products. So we tend to refresh our seeds every year and order in new ones. That doesn't mean to say that they won't germinate in when they're 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old. I just find, as a generalization, the germination tends to deteriorate. But if you've got time to sow more, because your seeds are 3 years old, I'd say if you need 10 Padron pepper plants, for example, but your seeds are 3 years old, I'd sow 20 seeds, and the likelihood is you'll still get enough germination, which would be great. Storage, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory: airtight, dry, that kind of thing, in the dark. It's a bit like you keep your baked beans at home, and they should last you for a while. And then I guess some troubleshooting around seeds. The main one would be germination. So, like I said, linking into what I've just said, the first tip would be to uh, check the date of your seeds, check how long you've had them. It might be a case that if you've had that packet for 2 or 3 years, it might be time to invest in some new season seeds. Like I said, they will deteriorate, affect your germination. Getting the temperature right is the main reason that your seeds won't germinate. At this time of year, that's adding heat to the type of things you want to sow. Again, like I said earlier in the thing, that's your long season crops. Later in the season, that'll be making sure your soil temperature is not too hot. You know, things like lettuce have a lower germination temperature than peppers and aubergines, for example. So if you're sowing those sort of late spring, early summer in a greenhouse, you know, things might start to get too hot. So temperature more than light for germination, and then light comes into play when the plants are small. They're growing, you know, the first 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks after germination, because like at this time of year, if your light levels aren't right, you'll get tall, leggy, weak plants that will struggle in the conditions. Right, I'm going to have a look at some of the questions that are popping up on YouTube. Got a few people have joined. So broad forking I've talked about. Are you restricted in what seed varieties you grow due to availability to purchase in bulk? So I'm in the scale of the farm and the surrounding projects at the moment is sort of like in a really great place where it's financially better for me to buy in bulk. Absolutely. However, because I'm not a massive scale, I can still go to places like Premier Seeds, whose seed count is quite high. If there's a specific variety that I can't get in bulk, and buy that as a smaller scale. To give you a quick example, you know, Premier Seeds do packs up to 1,000 seeds roughly. You talk about like kaleets, for example, they'll do a pack of 25, 30, 40 seeds. Now, realistically, on my scale at the moment, for something unique like kaleets that I can't get in bulk, I only need 100 to 150 plants. Therefore, 3 packets at £1 something on Premier Seeds is still not a massive investment. Of course, when it comes to stuff like carrots and lettuce and stuff like that, where I need thousands and thousands of seeds, buying in bulk, you know, and restricting the amount that it does restrict the varieties that I can grow. So a few other people saying hello. Thanks if you just joined. Like I said earlier, this is a bit of a pilot, a bit of a trial for something later in the season. We're talking about seeds, and I'm answering some of your questions. Someone's asking, is my little boy still helping? Yeah, he's not so little now. He's 7 years old. But yes, he helps from time to time. I'm sure he'd love to get a bit more involved if he could. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my notes. We've been talking for a good 20 minutes. Please, again, across Instagram and YouTube, if you are sort of following along, get questions in. And let me know if you've sown anything yet. I've not had anyone tell me if they've sown anything yet. I know it's early and it goes against sort of my advice, but some of you might ask, might have those grow lights and heat, and might be able to let me know what you've already sown. So there we go. The first one, Garden of Whedon. Nice. Cracking name, cracking name. I've only sown onions and peppers, which is great. Yeah, onions, now's about the time. You know, they take a week or two to germinate. Again, depending on what your germinating conditions are. And they don't tend to be affected by the low light levels this time of year. So yeah, first week in February, we'll be sowing onions en masse from seed. We've got a few more coming in. The Kentish Gardener. I've sown 3 varieties of onions and a few brassicas. I'm trying to hold back, but it's not working very well. Yeah, I alluded to that right at the beginning of this sort of stream. That's the hardest battle for all of us gardeners this year. We're excited with Christmas is out the way. We want to get cracking again for the new season. Andy Smith's just said the same. He's only got garlic in and onions from sets, which is great. That's some things that you can overwinter again on the farm. And in a couple of the consultancy sites, additional sites, we've got onion sets in and garlic. Nice. I'm rewinding to the beginning. Thanks. It will be up for you to watch back later, hopefully, if I can do the tech bit. So yes, I think I've touched on everything that I'll be saying. I guess we could start thinking about radish this time of season, kohlrabi mid-February, things like that. A few people joining now on Instagram. Oi Oi Stranger, hello. The Kitchen Gardens. Yes, sorry, it's been a while. Hopefully, this will be the catalyst to me being more active on social media this season. We'll have to see how we go. Okay, I'm going to go back to my notes. So we've talked about seed varieties, what I'm sowing this time of year. We've talked about what the impacts of light and heat has on germination and things like that this season. I've just seen a funny comment, which I'm going to come back to in a minute, because it's absolutely spot on. We've talked about some of the things. If you're absolutely desperate to sow now, you could start sowing. Again, I'd really stress to hold off unless you've got additional light and heat. And we've talked a little bit about where I am at and where the business at, and what hopefully we'll be doing this season. Now's the time is a great time to start planning your garden spaces. So if you want to get excited about the season ahead, start looking at ground preparation and things like that if you haven't already done so. For example, we are started this week shipping in our 15-ton trailers of compost at the various different sites. You'll have seen one of them, the first one arriving on Instagram if you follow me on there. And we're starting to finish off the ground prep, adding in that regenerative style, adding compost or soil improvers to the beds ready for planting later in the season. It will give that a time to settle. Won't start direct sowing anything in the ground until March, April time. So that's the kind of thing you can be doing now. But if you really want to get excited about it and want to give yourself a fighting chance for the season ahead, get ready. You can start planning what it is you're going to sow, when you're going to sow it. There's great material out there. Charles Dowding's got a great sowing calendar. There's lots of sowing calendars out there from other people as well. Charles's one is just one that springs to my mind. Steve's Seaside Allotment, if you're really want to get into it, it's got some unbelievable information out there. Absolutely unbelievable free information out there to help you plan your season ahead. Start thinking about rotations, how much seed you need for certain things and things like that. If you start planning and designing what you think your season's going to look like, which on a commercial level we've done a long time ago, back end of last year for this season. But now you can really, really get going, and it will help fester some of that excitement that you were talking about. Someone in Instagram asked, is it too late to plant garlic? The answer is no. You can plant garlic now. It won't catch up. You'll harvest it a month or two later. But effectively, as long as you're still going to have a cold snap at this time of year, which you are, it's only January, get it in the ground. Don't leave it too much longer. Hopefully it will get that frost, that cold snap that it needs to kickstart it, and you should have garlic. But it might be 1, 2, maybe even 3 months, depending on conditions, later than people that overwintered it. But for example, I planted mine way back at the end of September, and it's only 3 or 4 inches high. It's gone into sort of like a semi-dormant state over winter, like these overwinter plants do, just sort of holds on. And then when the weather improves, you've given it a kickstart to kick on in the new season. So I hope that answers your question. Good luck getting a hold of seed garlic this time of year, though. If you haven't already got it, you might find some in the garden centres in small amounts, but it's incredibly hard to get hold of this time of year. Garden of Whedon. This is the comment that I'm going to switch back to. There's no point in me starting anything too early, as I hate potting on. You and me both. So the only things that we try to pot on is, or we try. So let me rephrase that. We try not to pot on anything at all other than tomatoes, chili peppers, and aubergines. And that is because we're starting them sort of now or in the next few weeks. They're going to spend a lot of time undercover in seed trays, so they're going to need to grow on. And they need that big, long season. Everything else we try and hold off sowing for as late as we can, so that we can grow them just in small 25 mil by 25 mil seed cells, 104 in a big seed tray, grow them onto 2 or 3 inches tall in those particular cells and plant them directly out. And then we miss out that whole potting on process, because like Garden of Whedon, I absolutely hate it. Now, of course, I get help. I've got people that work for me, got help on various different sites. But I don't ask anyone to do anything I don't do myself. So I do get stuck in a little bit with potting on, and I absolutely hate it. Give me a wave on either Instagram or Facebook if you hate potting on as well. Pricking out and potting on is probably, I'd sooner do 2 hours weeding over pricking out and potting on. That's how much I hate it. Muddy Boots Nigel says, I've got seed onions, peppers, chilies, and aubergines also sown with bottom heat and under lights when germinate. Perfect. And you will get chili peppers and aubergines a month before me, because for that reason. But like I said, you've got that additional heat, you've got that additional light. You will be able to babysit those plants until they can go into their final growing location. So yeah, that is where you'll have chilies and peppers before me. We don't need them early in the season, because we grow so much variety. We tend to focus on getting those out in the second half of the season. The Kentish Garden, I love potting on. I'm only a small scale, so it's not that much to do. If I was doing more, it may not be as fun. And I get that. I do get that, and it's a good point. It's on a smaller scale, but I even hated it back when I was only growing, 20 lettuce plants for me and my little boy and things like that. It's just one of those things that's just too fiddly for me. It's just too fiddly. Okay, so I'm not going to be too much longer on here. Maybe do another 5 minutes or so. So now's your time to get in any questions around seeds, germination, anything that you want to ask me. Give me a shout now, because I'll try and answer as many questions. I suppose a bit of a teaser for the next coming weeks and months. So this was a bit of a trial, a bit of a pilot. I've certainly settled into it. I've started to find my rhythm a little bit more. I was a bit stop-start at the beginning and kept getting a little bit stuck. But like anything you're passionate about, when you get to talk about it, you sort of find your way. The potential for something like this to carry on throughout the season, a regular live, whether that be one a month, things like that, talking about what's gone on within the business for that month, what's happening in the growing world, a podcasty, streamy type thing. This is the pilot for it. I'm going to see how long it takes me to edit, see how long it takes me to chop this up into something good, and see if it's something I might want to move forward with in the future. I'm hoping, like a lot of these things, it won't just be me talking in the future. So there might be additional people on here with me, but we shall see. So we've got a few comments on Instagram. Andy Smith says, brilliant. I hope that is to the live thing that I was just talking about. Thank you, if that is immediate feedback. A lot of because I've been so well behaved with seed sowing, nothing this month, ignoring the overwinter stuff. Well done. I've said it a few times now. If you've been with me since the beginning, yeah, well done. It is the hardest thing because I am so excited for the season ahead. I really am. But yeah, I just want to get sowing. And I've got additional heat and light, and even I'm holding off even just a little bit. You end up just babysitting. I'll tell you the way I look at it, and I'll just do this very briefly, whilst any more questions may or may not come in. What I find myself doing is, even with additional heat and light, so you take chili peppers, for example. I could have sown them Jan the 1st, which I've done in the past when I had an allotment, when I had the first couple of seasons. I've got quite a number of grow lights where I can, when they're small plants, I can keep those under grow lights, and I've got the additional bottom heat for them to germinate. But then what I find is they grow quickly, and I've just misread something. Sorry, and it's I misread the word "sight" as a naughty word, so it distracted me. Let me go back to that. But what I find is when you do them really early, obviously with additional heat and light, your plants grow, and they grow like it's, you know, the season to grow. And then what you end up with is, in March, some really quite established chili plants that are ready to go out into their final position, but it's not quite past the, you know, the frost dates, or with stuff like chili, the overnight temperatures need to be sort of like above 12 degrees for them to not go dormant and to have a negative effect. So you end up really struggling to babysit those plants for March, April, until, well, depending on where you are in the season. So until they can go out in their final position, whether that's in a polytunnel, out in a field, out on an allotment, in your back garden, etc. And you know, Nigel's just put a really thing. You can pinch out your chilies to stunt that growth, but I'd sooner just sow them a month later, and then I've got less babysitting to do at the end of spring, and perhaps they're I've found that they're a more manageable size to look after, keep frost free, keep, you know, over 12 degrees at night, and then they go into their final growing position. So that's the reason I do it. So let me just go through some of these comments. YouTube star chat is great as long as you can do some site tours too, please. I will try my best. Now, this time of year, I always promise, yeah, I'm going to do them. I have taken on some additional help this year, which across all different areas of the business. So there's a possibility, but I won't promise. I will try and do it. A few people agree with Nigel, saying I do the same as Nigel. I pinch out my chilies, it slows them down under lights, which, yeah, is an absolute thing. I'm going to go back to Instagram. I must say I really need to sort out my seeds. Allotment Cook says, yeah, that's a good job for now. Go through, take stock of what you got, order anything else that you need, any new varieties you need to try. Allotment Cooks again says frost dates have been so late, not really into May over the last few years. Hoping for a proper long normal season this year. I mean, yeah, this is the time of year when we start getting interested about the weather again. We know it's going to be miserable. We know it's going to be miserable for a little bit of time, but we start praying or dreaming, whatever you're into, of a long, hot spring and summer to help with the growing season. Last couple of comments then. Foggy Geezer 3. I pulled mine out and put them in a pot in the basement. I'm assuming you're talking about overwintering chilies, maybe there. Yes, we've tried that for the first time ever on a small scale at one of our sites in a greenhouse So I'll keep you updated. I've got nothing for you on that yet because the plants are either dead or dormant, and I'm hoping dormant. I actually haven't checked on them in a couple of weeks, so that'll be a job for tomorrow. After a decent Brussels variety, if I've got any suggestions. Do you know what? My memory's terrible. I'll get back to you. I'll put it. I'll remember that. And if I do another one of these, I'll answer the question, or drop me an inbox on Instagram or something like that, and I can answer that for you. But my memory's terrible. I'd have to look at my notes. Right. I've been talking for nearly 40 minutes now. So I think for the sanity of anyone that's still with me, I'm going to call it a day. Thank you for joining me. Like I said, I'll see where this goes to. I've got one more question here from Nigel, and I love Nigel to bits, and I really like his content, so I'm going to answer it. With the latest compost load delivery, do you top dress or mix in with the top layer? On that particular site, I think you're assuming you're talking about the one that's been on Instagram. That is a soil improver. It's a mixture of green waste, compost, manures, and other things, all chemical, pesticide free. I actually went to visit the site. That will be laid on top. That will be laid on top. We're going to do that in the next week. Get that all transferred onto all the beds, polytunnels. We'll top up all of our beds, and we'll just let that, because we're not going to be planting in most of those apart from the polytunnels for the next 2 or 3 weeks. We'll let that just leach down into the soil and do it naturally. The soil's not too bad on that particular site, so we're happy with just top dressing it. Right, that's the last question I'm going to answer. I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you for joining me. Let me chop this up, make it into something, see if I have a little take stock of whether I enjoyed it or whether I was too nervous or too uri and just talked a load of nonsense. Hopefully it's something that I'll be able to do again in the coming weeks. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.